Thank you so much for your time. Give us the permission to share with you about our experience and our histories and about Teatro Jornalero sin Fronteras. My name is under the information about this discussion, but I think no es my group. Todas las personas que estamos aquí, everybody stay here, is the group. The most important is to each members of the labor Theater Without Borders. We coming from Central America, Mexico, and other countries, America. You know, it's only my story. It's our history. And I need to put it in context about who is one-day labor. I prefer read. My English now is the best of the best, but I try to share with you about who is one Latino migrant day laborers. Latino migrant day laborers is a labor to informal day labor market, a population composed almost entirely of impoverished and undocumented men from Mexico and Central America and women. Gather at the street corner, work, pickup site, in front of paint shop and hardware store or Home Depot, to solicit temporary work in their national day labor survey. I find this information I share with you. Estimated this population to exceed 1,017 persons to looking every day work in this country like a one-day labor. 40,000 persons in California, moving furniture and several other works, gardening, plumbing, electrician, and with regard to background characteristics, result from the last survey of this National Day Labor Survey. The 77% is from Mexico, and the 20% is from Central America, 84% undocumented, around 34 years of age and 7 years of education on average, 53% in the US for less than 5 years, and 50% married or having partners. The most important thing we need to share with you is every day my community looking jobs, and in the end of the weekend we win only around $300 per week, or $200 when it's a lucky week, around $500. And right now we have the privilege to be a part of this group, the Day Labor Theater Without Borders, and using our voices or histories like a tool to educate other people outside our community and inside our community about our rights in this country. We are humans. We feel everything around our lives. When we work in one hard week, we need to pay our bills here in this country, and additional, we need to send money for our kids. I'm from Guatemala. My father born in El Salvador, my mom born in Guatemala. I have 3 kids in my country. And today when I saw this movie, each minute I think in my kids. And I think a lot in my partners, in my husband, he's from Mexico. He take the trip over the Bestia, the train, 15 years ago. this is no new story. This is one story for more than, I think, 30 years. We looking all the opportunity to better life for our family in our countries, or better life in this country. Please, if you have questions, I need to introduce each member of Teatro Jornalero Sin Fronteras. Por favor, si pueden decir su nombre y de qué país son.
Glad to meet you every day.
I'm sorry. Si te sientes bien en español, y nos ayuda aquí don Salvador a traducir.
Okay.
Gracias.
My name is Fronteras. I am born in Mexico City. I'm coming in United States and maybe with 20 years. My family is in Mexico City. I 1 year in Teatro Jornalero. I like it because it's the people very, very, very good. And my sentiment for the people, immigration, like, it's very in my heart.
Thank you, Hilda.
No need of translation.
No. Anelita.
Yo sí quiero traducir, yo puedo hablar inglés, pero
¿O
yo,
no habla inglés?
Hable.
pero yo prefiero que
Ah.
tener traducción para que todos entiendan. Mi nombre es Adela Palacios.
I'm Adela Palacios.
Sí, nací en El Salvador
I was born in El Salvador.
y la verdad no pude ver la película
I couldn't see the
porque
movie
todo lo que está ahí,
because everything what
estos
you
ojos lo
watch,
miraron
these
lo sintieron.
eyes lived and went through,
y anduve entre ellos,
and I was
pero
one
no
of them.
era de uno de ellos, sino que me usaban. Fui raptada por 10 años.
I was not a member. I was enslaved for 10 years. I was used.
De uno de ellos, encadenada por 10 años.
I was in chains for 10 years.
Y viví una vida igualita como la de ellos, porque me obligaban. Y sinceramente me salí, porque no pude aguantar.
I couldn't handle it anymore, so I escaped.
Estados Unidos no era mi sueño americano.
Coming to the U.S. was not my American dream.
Mi caso es muy diferente a muchos, porque hay otros países donde uno puede vivir y mejor que en Estados Unidos.
There are other cases in which you can go to other countries and you can live much better than in the U.S.
Pero la persona que me tuvo encadenada por 10 años anduvo siguiéndome de país en país para matarme a mí y a mi familia.
But the person that enslaved me for 10 years was chasing me from country to country and trying to kill my family.
Y por eso estoy aquí en Estados Unidos.
And that's why I'm here in the U.S.
Y quiero decir con todo mi corazón, Dios bendiga a América. Porque en este país yo sentí el abrazo, el arrullo y por primera vez un techo, una cama para descansar y comida. Nunca más aguantar hambre, frío.
And I said, God bless America, because in this country I found support, I found a roof, bed, and be able to feed myself.
Y trabajé y estudié y me gradué.
And I went to school, worked hard, and graduated from school
De enfermera.
as a nurse.
Trabajé muchos años en los hospitales.
So I worked for many years in different hospitals.
No le vine a quitar a nadie el trabajo. Como muchas personas piensan que uno viene aquí a quitar el trabajo. No. Vine a luchar para ayudar a mi familia y vivir civilizadamente como ser humano.
I did not come here to take away a job from anybody. I came here to work hard, to help to support my family.
Thank you, David.
Okay.
Y tener una vida de ser humano.
And have a human being life,
Porque sí, me crié como un animal.
because I was raised like an animal.
No civilización, nada.
Gracias, David.
Bienvenida.
Muchas gracias.
Bienvenida.
Good afternoon, everybody. Does everybody over here speak English, or do I translate myself into Spanish?
I think you can speak English. I think most people speak English.
Does everybody speak English, or? Hi. My name is Juan Llamar. I'm a new participant from Teatro, Jornalero, Fronteras. I was born in Central America, in El Salvador, but I didn't have that story. You know, I was blessed to be brought here to the U.S. at a very early age, back in 1986. So you know, it's a very touching story, because I have had a lot of friends of mine who actually went through that story, you know, but I had actually never seen anything like that, you know. It's a risk people have to take, you know, to bring their families the things that they need, you know. There's I've had a lot of friends that, you know, and they share with me the fact of the matter that they have to leave their families behind, you know, and that's a very sad story for a lot of people, because sometimes, unfortunately, they don't get to see their families again. So I was very moved by the story, you know. I am from El Salvador, but I'm not from Llamar, you know, so nobody be afraid. Yeah, but that's me, and we are Teatro Jornalero Sin Fronteras, you know, and we like to, through drama, we like to share the stories of the people, you know. We put together stories of our lives, you know, and we share them with the communities. So here we are, Teatro Jornalero Sin Fronteras.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Gabriel Cruz. I am from Veracruz, and I know the place. I don't know if you remember the Tierra Blanca.
Yeah.
I live 2 hours from that little town, and I used to go to the little town once in a while. And behind that town there is another place they call Tustepec. And this place is a lot of place where they have a lot of prostitutes. But most of the ladies who are doing this kind of job there, they are from South America. If you go, because everybody say, you wanna get a Salvadorian lady, go to Tustepec. You wanna wear a Mara lady, go to Tustepec. Because in that place they have a lot of, I think it's like a slave. Like, you know, they rack people and make prostitution in that place. Like it's very young lady. I went a couple times to take a look, because there's another place, like a tourist place there. And I used to pass for there, but I know that place. And I haven't seen any time the bestia like that. But people say that they used to pass in the night time around there. And now I am part of this for Teatro Sin Fronteras. I'm very happy to be with them. I started with them in 2009, and now I am enrolled into another series. And you know, it's very sad movie. Thank you.
Well, my story is not interesting, it's boring, so I mean, don't say anything.
Where are you from?
I'm underground from Mexico. I grew up, went to college, graduate, work, grow old, and I'm here.
How many years you worked, you be a part of Teatro Jornalero Sin Fronteras?
I don't know, 5 years.
So Lorena is the
5
interviewer
años.
now.
He doesn't like speak a lot, but for me, it's my pleasure, Ernest Graham, be a part of Teatro Jornalero Sin Fronteras. I'm sorry, I love you a lot. When he comes to Teatro Jornalero Sin Fronteras, every day, if somebody tried to help, why? Move! Don't touch my thing. And right now, like a lovely personality. Teatro Jornalero Sin Fronteras is a one family. Adela Palacios,
I want
she
to say
has,
just a little something.
okay.
When the first time I go to Teatro Jornalero, I was be a person, white person, no friends. I don't want nobody. I don't trust nobody. I never talk to nobody. But I socialize with a lot of people from different countries, different cultures, and I started just look at everybody, study everybody, and I started talk and I say and I just. But Teatro Jornalero is like something where you, right there, you meet friends. Then you, if you have stress, you have occupy your time to do something when instruct your mind. It's no stress. You enjoy yourself, make friends, and I get for like it. Well, right now I don't know do it, but I'm gonna come back to Teatro Jornalero again.
For the last 5 years, she is a part of Teatro Jornalero Sin Fronteras. Teatro Jornalero Sin Fronteras, in the past year, is we working behind the umbrella of Cornerstone Theater. Somebody hear about the Cornerstone Theater company?
Yes.
Yeah. The Michael John Garces, the director of Cornerstone Theater, he created this one play. The name is The Illegals. And he work and provide life to this project. And right now we're working under the umbrella del Rescate. The reason is we are in transition. Michael John Garces is my mentor, my friend, and he provides the opportunity to working outside and explore to looking our 501c3. This is our first step outside the cornerstone, outside our home. Thanks to the opportunity, El Rescate, Mr. Salvador believe in our dreams and support our dreams. And right now we're working. I'm looking other partners to continue to working and educate our community. I am married with one day labor. In the beginning, when I moved to this country 7 years and a half, I worked in 2 years in front of the One Home Depot in Long Beach, like a day labor. And right now, I feel day labor is part of my life. It's the best thing to making my life, working like a day labor and knows the really roots of what happened with this community in this country. That's why I represent my community. I am part of this community. And thank you so much. If you have more questions, thank you for the
Well, we should allow some questions because the public has not had chance maybe about the movie or about the history of Central America.
What's your story?
My story is no story. You already heard the good stories here. I'm Salvador and I was born in El Salvador. So I came as an immigrant, crossed the border from Tijuana into California back in 1980. So in 82, I went back. So I crossed the border in Eagle Pass, and then I had to go back again and cross the border in Yuma, Arizona. So I'm 3 veces mojado.
Sin vergüenza.
So that's my story. There is no story there. But maybe you want to know more about this flow of forced migration, because it's really forced migration. It's not that people, like that girl, she didn't want to come here. She wanted to stay in Honduras. And that is the case of many towns in Central America and Mexico. If you go to those towns, you only find old people taking care of young kids that had been left with the abuelos and las abuelitas, grandpas and grandmas, because the productive age adults are either here in the U.S., and in the case of Central America, there is a flow of migration to Europe too, especially Italy and Spain.
Greece.
And in the 80s, Canada opened its borders for non-recognized refugees from Central America that were already here in California and other parts of the U.S. They were able to cross the border into Canada, and they were granted asylum and refugee status, you know, that the U.S. never recognized for Central Americans. 35 years later, 3 decades and a half, we are reliving again humanitarian crisis at the border, because in the last 2 years, since the summer of 2014, more than 100,000 kids, teenagers and young kids have come to the border between Mexico and the US, escaping violence, because the history of that region has been, through centuries, a history of violence.
Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes.
Because I find it very hard to watch. I always find it very hard to watch violence, period.
Yes.
But and I know, of course, gangs and it's everywhere. But what was unclear to me is what the gangs were doing, what their business was, and of course we hear the stories about all the violence and the gangs, but maybe.
Well, I'm not an expert on the gangs, but this gentleman here caught my attention. He has the 1% sign there, and so the reality of the region, and that historically has created the cycle of violence, is the power and the wealth concentrated in very few hands, subjecting, with that power and that wealth, the vast majority of the peoples in Central America and Mexico to toil to preserve that structure of power. Well, yes. So that's really, what creates the violence mill, going on. Gangs, they were not existent in Central America, but we came here as immigrants to Los Angeles when I came here in 1980 in order to adapt ourselves to live in a urban society like Los Angeles, in the poor barrios, like Pico Union, Westlake, close to MacArthur Park. That's where some of those gangs were born, because they were fighting for territory with already existing gangs in Los Angeles. Those kids got in trouble with the law. Many of them went sent to prison. They served time. And when the war ended in Central America in the early 90s and mid-90s, they had served their time in prison and they were deported back to their nations of origin, especially El Salvador. Mm-hmm. And that's how the reproduction of that culture took root in Central America and spread all over the region. Now we're having a war. Really, it is a declared war, where the armies of Central America and the police forces of Central America are battling the descendants of the first gang members that were sent back there. And prisons are full of people to max capacity. And there is a war, in the poor barrios of the Central American capitals. And because of the repression, the war has spread to the countryside. So why are the kids coming?
Yeah.
Well, the movie was very clear explaining, young kids are the new soldiers of these irregular armies, battling other armies. So kids are the victims, girls are the victims, The civilian population is the victims. And the only way these societies manage to stay together is because we as immigrants here toil, as they were explaining here, to send money back, to sustain those families left behind. Maybe sending half of what they make or a quarter of what they make. 3 countries in Central America receive more than $9 billion of family remittances a year. And that, again, fuels the mill of violence, power, wealth, and exploitation of peoples in the region. So it's a great business to have that bunch of dollars to fuel the communication industry, the weapons industry, the drug industry, the human trafficking industry. That is only that is at $35 billion a year worldwide, the human trafficking industry. So we can see then what this creates, no? And why those police forces, instead of protecting those guys riding the train, they were assaulting them, robbing them, raping them, because it is power and resources that corrupt the justice, police, army, political system in those countries. So I have nothing else to say because the movie,
very explicit.
the images really.
I know why corruption is so rampant, because we willingly pay taxes. Even when we go buy a bag of chips, here's your 10 cents. That's why corruption keeps continuing. Until we can all band together and say, no, we're not going to pay taxes, it will continue.
Yeah.
You said you crossed 3 times. Can you just describe each time you crossed? Did it get harder, or what was the border like?
Okay, the first time when I crossed in 1980, me and my cousin, because I came with a cousin of mine, we hired a pollero, a coyote, and he helped us to cross the border walking.
How much was it?
Back then, my aunt paid $1,000 for both of us because we came to Tijuana and we hired the service there. It wasn't like it is now that parents have to pay for their kids $6,000 to bring them all the way from Guatemala, Honduras, or El Salvador here. And the second time, I was able to cross because there was a movement here in the church in the U.S. Called the Sanctuary Movement, or the Underground Railroad, that was active back and before the Civil War, helping slaves to escape slavery from south to north. So, and that movement was a movement that crossed borders too, because church were active in Mexico supporting, the smuggling of people fleeing violence in Central America. So the second time and the third time, with their help, I was able to cross.
So the border, did it become more militarized, more harder to
But now, at that time it was, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
But what is happening now is that President Obama used to have the title of the deporter in chief, because he had deported during his 8 years in the White House. More than 2.5 million people have been deported from the U.S. But now that title is no longer in Washington, D.C. That title moved to Mexico City. because under a regional plan called the Merida Plan, our tax monies have helped to set up a military border in the southern border of Mexico with Central America. We have funneled the Mexican government in the last 2 years more than $282 million of military aid. So Mexico is now the deporter in chief.
And that's like what the EU is doing, paying Turkey to keep the Syrians and Iraqis and Afghanis out.
Very similar, very
They
similar.
picked it up from us.
Yeah, so more and more every day, the numbers speak by themselves, you know. The larger number of people being deported is sent back in buses from the southern border of Mexico back to Guatemala, back to Honduras, back to El Salvador. I think in the last 6 years, more than 1.5 million people have been deported from Mexico. And the numbers are going high. That is the reality we're living now these days. But even with that happening, people find their ways to come here, risking their lives, with facing great dangers, escaping near-death experiences, you know, and they keep coming because they don't have any other choice. So we have a humanitarian regional crisis that is not really recognized or faced, you know, by governments because they wash their hands. They don't want to deal with this, you know. Thank you. Sí.
Thank you.
There's a question.
Una, sí, claro,
Sí.
claro.
¿Cómo yo vengo de Sudamérica y no hay esto, no están así las pandillas, pero ustedes como comunidad están en todos los estados más importantes de este país y son mayoría, como los salvadoreños, guatemaltecos y mexicanos. Se han organizado como para parar que no venga gente de esa forma hasta aquí, de enviar, de tener un proyecto económico, político, social. No es un gobierno, pero una idea de trabajo para que los que están creciendo allá no piensen que aquí es la solución. Yo creo que hay que educar allá a la gente que está creciendo. Mi pregunta es si se están organizando en ese sentido, porque otros países que son líderes están mirando hacia adentro, a su futuro está entre los países nuestros. Estados Unidos, quizás cuántos años más, no sé, pero hay que cambiar la mentalidad y de no venir hasta aquí, porque el precio que paga cada persona por venir a este país es invaluable, o sea, no tiene valor, es demasiado caro.
Can you summarize maybe in English?
Well, he was saying that if there is an organized movement in Central America and Mexico to try to change the flow of migration and organize a economic and social program to encourage people not to leave their lands, their nations of origin, because the cost, the human cost, is very high, you know, for people leaving their countries, especially the young people and productive youth, you know, leaving.
But that does, I'm sorry.
So
she
yo
was
quiero-
gonna respond.
Yo quiero nomás agregar un poquito de... Ellos no piensan en que van a venir a sufrir, solo lo único que desean es sobrevivir, porque allá están matando a la gente. No piensan que en Estados Unidos van a sufrir, no piensan que en México van a sufrir. Ellos uno solo quiere sobrevivir. ¿Me entienden?
The people are fleeing because of their survival. You know, they don't think about how hard it's gonna be to survive here and all the obstacles they're gonna face. But they're just fleeing for their survival because, you know, people are being killed down there.
Respecto al señor, no, yo soy madre de familia, he venido a trabajar aquí en Estados Unidos, he trabajado car wash, cocinera, todo para sacar a mis hijos adelante. Yo les estoy dando una educación a mis hijos para que no pierdan nuestras historias de nuestros antepasados, porque venimos de varias culturas. Estados Unidos es un país cosmopolita y tenemos que convivir con la sociedad, con varias personas, varias culturas y varias historias. Y enseñamos a nuestros hijos de modo que aprendan los valores que tenemos nosotros y de nuestros antepasados, de nuestras historias de México, de diferentes partes, y también que aprendan, porque nacen en Estados Unidos, que tenemos valores como personas y seres humanos, que tenemos valores para alcanzar lo que mucha gente aquí alcanza. Y les estamos dando el valor y estamos sacándolos adelante para que ellos sean hombres de bien y actitudes buenas, y no piensen en gangas, no piensen en nada, porque somos familia y la familia se apoya. Nosotros estamos comprendiendo todo en Teatro Jornalero, somos una familia, nos estamos apoyando, nos estamos reuniendo para salir adelante, para sacar a nuestras familias adelante, para hacer un país mejor, para no ser discriminados como personas malas, como personas que venimos aquí a quitarle a la gente lo que es de ellos. Dios hizo el mundo para todos, Dios nos ama y somos diferentes, pero todos somos hermanos.
May 1st is Sunday at noontime at the corner of Olympic and Broadway, very near from here. Oh, yeah, that way.
That way.
That way. Okay, at noontime on May 1st, it's a Sunday, the corner of Olympic and Broadway, we're gonna march on Broadway, rallying for many of these issues, for the kids at the border, asking a refugee status for them, a temporary protected status, demanding an immigration reform, asking the Supreme Court to rule in favor of enacting President Obama extended DACA and the new DAPA for parents that is being blocked by several states in the Louisiana Circuit Court. And on last Monday, the Supreme Court of Justice of the United States heard arguments from the government lawyers to rule that executive order was within the constitutional frame of the president's mandate. But now it's being challenged in court. No? So we're going to march for that. We're going to march against the rhetoric, the prose of Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. The xenophobic, anti-immigrant. It's a long list of stuff those two gentlemen have. And so, we need to express our feelings, positions, Our voices need to be heard in the city of Los Angeles, because there are also very worrisome things going on in this city. Did you see the budget presented by the mayor to the city council of Los Angeles? You see there a column of that budget? Almost the entire money goes for the other LAPD, not this LAPD. And the rest of the programs, or services of the city, they're tiny.